Hi, I'm Wes Platt, Executive Editor of School Bus Fleet. Welcome to The Route, our ongoing content series. Our guest today is Ken Whisnant, who's an engineering manager at Thomas Built Buses in North Carolina. Before we hit the road, be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Comments and email, always welcome. Okay, let's get rolling. The Kansas Department of Education just released their latest National School Bus Loading and Unloading Survey. It's in its 51st year. And I was really astonished to see in the survey that back in 1970, when it started, there were 75 student deaths in that year during the loading and unloading process. Now, that number is obviously, it's dropped over the years to the point where in 2020-21, it's down to 4 fatalities. And a couple of those were children who were hit by vehicles passing illegally on the driver's side of the bus, and then the other 2 were struck by the bus itself in the old, well-known danger zone, right? So clearly, we want 0 serious injuries and deaths, but we have made a lot of progress. Some of that, as was discussed at the NASDIPS conference, was due to driver training and awareness, bus driver training and awareness. But how much do you think evolving technology has factored into that decline in serious injuries and deaths in the danger zone?
Well, I think it's a 2-part, Wes. Well, first, let me say thanks for having me on today. I enjoy the opportunity always to talk about school buses and this great industry. But I think it is 2-part, right? You've got the completely agree with the driver training part of that, and it's some of the things that we learned is first to go out and talk to drivers and understand how they do what they do, and it was amazing to hear the processes that they use to do their job every day in and out, and it's proven effective. And certainly the tools, the technology, the mirrors, the lighting, things like that have changed over the years have added to that, to the decrease in those horrible events. And so we're heading in the right direction, but as you said, we want 0.
Right. And that's your job every day, right? Coming in, trying to think up new ways to make the buses safer and more efficient. So that's great. All right, time for a quick detour. First, we want to get to know you a little better. How did you get started at Thomas Built Buses?
Good question. So long time ago, went to school for mechanical engineering, and incidentally, I had worked at the Freightliner truck plant in Cleveland, North Carolina, prior to going to college, and so had a little experience with the company, and had then gone off to college and got a degree in mechanical engineering. And when I got out of school, lo and behold, was very fortunate enough to be able to enter this industry with Thomas Built Buses, and part of the same company that I was working for before I even went to school. And so, yeah, I started engineering department 20 years ago.
Wow. Well, it seems like you enjoy the job. You feel good coming to work every day?
Absolutely. And I was just actually, ironically enough, talking to one of my teammates yesterday, and we're talking about different industries, and that's one of the things, right? It's a feel good every day. We can always see the impact that our work has, and I don't know that every industry is as fortunate to be able to see that value, if you will, all the way through as to how each of our roles affect that, and knowing at the end of the day, for working for such a noble cause as getting kids to and from school safely, it does feel good, honestly. Yes.
I think it would have to. I mean, I'm just peripheral, right? I'm just part of the media covering school transportation, but I live in Durham, and the Durham Public Schools, they use Thomas Built Buses. And I know when I visited the plant a couple of months ago, you see the Thomas Built Buses everywhere. And I imagine if you're on the engineering team working on these things, seriously, you see them out there all the time, and it's got to be a point of pride when you see those things. I mean, I know I just get a kick out of saying I write about those things. I recognized a Julie because I got to drive one, and I'm like, I know what that's like. So it's got to be very fulfilling to see that real world tangible thing for your work out there. Yes. Now we're going to get back to the latest innovation that was announced by Thomas Built Buses, the new Saf-T-Zone pedestrian detection system. Can you run down how that works?
Sure. So it is a 7 radar system. So it uses a 77 gigahertz radar, 7 of them. There's 2 in the front, 3 down the right side, and 2 in the rear. So our zones, if you will, and you used the word or the phrase danger zones earlier.
Right.
Anybody familiar with school bus knows and understands what that is. And so our system, the intent behind it was to be able to give our drivers the tools to help them in the job that they do every day. Because as we talked about very early on here in this, it's really a 2-part, right? We got the piece of the driver, we've got the part they do every day, the tools that they currently use. And so I think a big piece of any technology is being thoughtful and making sure that we add another tool, if you will, in their belt to I guess build upon what they already have. And so basically this system provides coverage for the front, right side, and rear of the school bus. So it protects and is viewing, if you will, out to 10 feet from the front, side, and the rear. It's active whenever the ignition is on and the entrance door is open. So it is looking, for persons standing there. And our target size that we really developed around was mimicked after the mirror testing in FMVSS 111, which is a 12 by 12 cylinder. So we really wanted to be able to, again, accentuate and highlight the things that those systems already can detect and provide to the driver. So basically, anytime those conditions are met, i.e. the bus is sitting still, the entrance door open, and the ignition on, this system is active, and it provides really several different notifications, the primary being a indicator in the cross view mirrors. So I bring that up and I keep wanting to tie that back into the tools that a driver already has and being thoughtful innovation, because we know that mirror systems work. And so we wanted to make sure that we, again, accentuate that and draw drivers' eyes to those. So the primary indicator for our system is actually in the mirror. So when a person is within 6 to 10 foot of any of those zones, there's a strip of LED lights above those cross view mirrors that will indicate, hey, need to be aware that somebody's in this zone. And when they get into what we call the critical zone, that's within 0 feet of the bus out to 6 feet, those light up red. So that gives the driver that bit of information to be looking in that source of the cross view mirrors. As a secondary to that, there is an 8.5 inch LCD display on the dash that will give them an indication of exactly where the system is detecting the presence of a person.
Is there a haptic feedback too? There's some kind of a buzz or something they get?
There is a haptic feedback in the driver's seat itself, just a buzz. So again, kind of touching on all those sensory things and there's even an audible. While the entrance door is open, that audible is down to like 50%. So we didn't want to over sensitize a driver, basically, because when the door is open, they're doing a natural and a planned stop. They're going to have kids around the bus.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that there's a clear difference when they shouldn't be. And so once that door goes closed, and actually the system stays active until the vehicle gets up to 10 miles an hour. So
okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, so what prompted Thomas Built to develop this feature?
Well, and I think it really is back to you mentioned it earlier, always looking for ways to make things better and safer. You can see the need, right? Anytime there's any type of fatality or injury or anything like that, there's a what could we do? What could we look at? And I think just trying to develop ways, again, to be mindful, try to understand those situations. And before we release this system, we spent a lot of time talking to drivers, interviewing drivers, doing focus groups to understand, again, how they do what they do today, the tools that they use. And it really was amazing to really hear their methods and how they do it, the consistency in all of it. But you don't know if you don't ask. And I think the worst thing to do is assume. So we know the safety record of the school bus, and obviously, as you talked about, the driver training that is gone into this relationship really that has made school bus transportation so safe. So,
all right, very cool. Well, thanks so much for your time. It's time to park the bus for now. Thanks to Ken Whisnant for joining as my guest. Thanks to you for watching. Post your thoughts in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of The Route. Send email to wes.platt@bobbitt.com. Tweet us at schoolbusfleet. Drive safely and see you next time on The Route.